It's here. The Wimbledon final is finally here. It's Ons Jabeur versus Marketa Vondrousova for the SW19 All England Club title. And I cannot wait to get into this because we're going to have a new Wimbledon champion. We're going to have someone extra on that board, and it's going to be a new name. Before we get into it, though, remember to that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to break this down, do a quick preview, and also then do a prediction as well. So we're going to go through each player's route to the final. We're then going to talk about their head-to-head as well, which is 3-all, by the way, interesting. And then we're going to finish up by talking about it more strategically and technically, and what we might see from both players, how it might play out, and then ultimately I'll give you guys my prediction as well. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, though, I wanted to mention a few things. Of course, last year, Ons Jabeur made the final against Alina Rybakina, and she's had a very interesting route, and we'll touch upon that in detail in a second. But she's made her second consecutive Wimbledon final. She's made the final in the last, well, she's made three finals, with 3 Grand Slam finals in the last 5 slams. Incredible. She made the final of Wimbledon last year, US Open, and now Wimbledon again this year. So the 2 that she missed out on, of course, Australian Open and the French this year. Vondrousova, though, is also not any stranger to a Grand Slam final. She lost at the Roland Garros final in 2019 as a 19-year-old as well, no doubt, and played against Ash Barty, lost in that final, but she's got a little bit of experience on a different surface, albeit, and a few years ago now, but still some valuable experience. And Ons Jabeur looks to again become the first player from Africa to win a Grand Slam. Or first African or Arab woman even to win a Grand Slam. So she's looking to make history, not just for Tunisia, but for Africa as well. For Vondrousova, of course, looking to make her own slice of history by becoming the first unseeded woman to lift the dish, or the Venus Rosewater dish, as they like to call it. Let's then get into this then. So let's go through each player's route to the final. For Vondrousova, and we'll go through hers first, actually, because I think hers has been interesting. She's played Stans, good win there. I thought the Kudermetova win was really good because I expected Kudermetova to beat Vondrousova. That was a really good win. Vekic, also a good win. Buzkova, solid win. And Pegula, where she came from behind to win. And Svitolina has been playing some really good tennis at Wimbledon, and also not just at Wimbledon, but Roland Garros. Since her return from giving birth, she's been really, really good. And she's played some great offensive tennis. Vondrousova, she absorbed it, gave some back herself as well, and ended up winning in straight sets impressively. For Ons Jabeur, she's had arguably one of the toughest runs I've seen. If she were to win this Wimbledon title, it's one of the more impressive Grand Slam runs I've seen in my lifetime. She beat Freck and Bay the first 2 rounds, to be fair. No offense to either player, but not terrible opponents. It's from here, from Andreescu onwards. So she played 4 straight Grand Slam champions in a row. Andreescu, of course, who won the US Open a few years back, beat her in 3 sets. It was actually a breakdown in the final set, recovered nicely. That was a really good match. Destroyed Petra Kvitova, the 2-time Wimbledon champion, and bagelled her in one of the sets as well, and then beat last year's finalist and got revenge over Alina Rybakina. Played some really good tennis there as well, winning in 3 sets. Lost the first in the tiebreak after serving for the set. Recovered nicely, won the next 2. And against Sabalenka, she did something similar. She lost the first in a tiebreaker, so maybe she needs to try and stay away from tiebreakers. And then won the next 2 sets, though. Again, coming from behind in one of the sets, I think it was the second set, she was a breakdown, recovered nicely, went on to win. And I think up here, there's been a big, big shift. I think that there were some matches in the past where she would have been in those positions as losing positions and she would have folded or capitulated. What's really impressive to me is the fact that she hasn't done that. She's done the complete opposite. She's recovered, she's fought, and she's actually come out on top, which to me shows a great mental toughness. In terms of the head-to-head, there's actually one match missing on here, which was on clay. Don't really need to talk about it, but Jabeur won that one. The head-to-head is 3-all, as I said. All of Jabeur's wins have been, 2 on clay. Stuttgart on that win in 2016, Stuttgart in 2022 that was, and in Eastbourne on the grass 2 years ago. She beat her in straight sets, Vondrousova that is. And then Jabeur lost to Vondrousova in 2015. But the 2 most recent ones in 2023, so one in Jan and one in March, Vondrousova's won both of them. Now, that's a little bit of a red flag if you're a Jabeur fan. Yes, a different surface, but doesn't make it any easier to digest, I think, as a Jabeur fan, if you are a Jabeur fan, knowing that this is going to be a tough match and she might have some scar tissue from that. Because not only did she lose in Indian Wells to her, but she lost at the Australian Open to Vondrousova in 3 sets. And the 2 sets that Vondrousova won were breadsticks, so they were comprehensive sets. The one in Indian Wells, I think, was 6-4, 7-5, something along those lines. In fact, I can tell you now it was 7-6, 6-4. Again, Jabeur, I would like to know her tiebreak record because by the looks of it, it's not particularly good this year. But look, I'm really happy for both players. They seem like they really are hungry for this title, and I can't wait to see it because I think it's going to be very interesting to see slightly different styles clash. Of course, one's a righty and Jabeur one's a lefty. Vondrousova, to be fair, though, does have some of the drop shots and the slices, but she does have some power with the serve. She's got, pretty solid forehand wing as well, and the backhand is pretty serviceable. The only thing that I would say is that she might look not be intimidated, but she might look at that Petra Kvitova win, who's also a lefty that Jabeur had, and Jabeur might take confidence from that as well and say, well, hold on, I don't mind playing a lefty really, and especially after beating Petra Kvitova. The way that she did, she might really fancy her chances. But for Vondrousova being a lefty, there's always that advantage that you always play righties all the time. So there's no real need to mix it up. But for Jabeur, it'll be interesting, and we'll break that down in a second. So tactically and strategically, how does this one potentially play out? So on Jabeur, her first serve percentage has not been particularly high, so she's going to have to rely a little bit on a second serve if that's going to continue, and that trend's going to continue. She's going to have to be clever with the second serve, with the placement, with the spin, the speed. A lot of her second serves have been into the body. That's a good tactic. I think she needs to obviously adjust it slightly to the lefty of Vondrousova, who I think will try and attack the second serve, as most people try to, because Ons Jabeur's second serve is not massive. And then the first serve of Jabeur, she's obviously going to look to go into the backhand of Vondrousova predominantly, which is going to be a righty's forehand. So she's going to utilize, from my understanding and what I imagine she's going to do, is she's going to utilize the slice serve out wide on the juice side. I think she's going to utilize that, quite often. And similarly, the serve down the tee from the ad side. Now, she will occasionally go and mix it up, and she should mix it up by going to the body or out wide to the forehand. But she needs to hit her spots. So she's going to go to the forehand side, especially. Vondrousova seems to have a decent all-round game. Like, there aren't huge weaknesses from what I've seen, and I haven't seen as much of her as I've seen of Jabeur, in all honesty, mainly because she was injured as well. In fact, interestingly, she was actually injured and in the cast when Jabeur lost to Rebecca last year at Wimbledon, so she wasn't playing that tournament. And she's ranked 42 in the world, so she's unseeded, which is why she's made some history there as well. Look, I mean, for her, she just needs to play the fearless tennis that she's been playing throughout the whole tournament. And she doesn't seem to be, I don't think, blurred or maybe mentally clouded by any expectations or pressure, etc. And that's a really positive thing. I would be a bit worried if this was her first Grand Slam final, because Jabeur's played 2 of them already. So she can kind of lean upon that experience a little bit, albeit she lost them, but, she still was in them. But for Vondrousova, she has also been in Grand Slams herself. So that is a real positive. And yes, it was a few years ago. Yes, it was on clay, but she'll remember that experience, and she's more mature since then as well. I think Vondrousova needs to try and get Jabeur into awkward positions, and just how Jabeur's going to try and disrupt the rhythm of Vondrousova, she needs to do exactly the same to Jabeur. She needs to play her drop shot. She's got a pretty good drop shot herself as well. We know Ons Jabeur's drop shot is one of the best on tour. I think Vondrousova's is definitely up there. She likes to slice at times as well. I think it's a really effective tool. And what's really interesting is the fact that she only won 4 matches on grass before coming into this Wimbledon's tournament. So she doesn't have a lot of experience on the grass, and she clearly doesn't, or people wouldn't have had great high expectations of her, including myself. But clearly she does have the game for it, because she's beaten some incredible players. So what that tells me is that she's adapted her game to the surface and really made it work for her. So I think she's going to have some success in this final. I think what she needs to do is get so Jabeur is at her best, for me anyway, when she's able to dictate proceedings. She's actually pretty underrated in defensive abilities as well. And we saw that against Sabalenka and Rybakina because those are two massive hitters. So you need to be good defensively to come out on top against them. And she was. And what she did really well as well was adapt her game and adjust and be patient in certain rallies. The backhand's going to be key because Vondrousova's going to go to that side predominantly with the forehand, we know, especially she's going to go forehand cross. Jabeur needs to be really solid on that wing. Now, the positive thing for her is that that wing actually, for me, is really solid for the most part from what I've seen, especially in this tournament and also in recent past. You could argue it's more solid than the forehand. And what she's been utilizing really well is a backhand line. Now, you might say, well, the backhand line she was utilizing to the righty forehand will probably be even more effective potentially against the lefty. Now, I'm not so sure about that, and I'll tell you why. Because the backhand line, the reason why sometimes it can be so effective against a righty is because they tend to leave more space open on the juice side because their court positioning for a lot of players as a righty is actually not necessarily right on in the middle, right in the center of the court. They tend to be slightly off center towards the ad side because they want to try and hit more forehands than backhands. They want to try and protect the backhand and try and run around it when they can, which leaves them a bit more susceptible to being attacked down the line on the forehand side. So that's why Jabeur utilized that really well, because what she would do is she'd drag out the righty into the backhand corner, and then she'd open it up, and she'd go backhand line, or she'd even go behind them at times, and she was taking it early. Now against Vondrousova, she might not be able to hit as many winners going line because Vondrousova is probably going to be in that corner potentially. But what she might have to do, or what she may even end up doing, is utilize it as more of a tool to try and induce errors from Vondrousova on the backhand side, or try and get a forehand as quickly as possible. And that still means that she's going to have to hit with quality line, because if she doesn't, then the backhand that Vondrousova hits could be an angled backhand cross court, because if there's not enough depth on that shot, which I think is the key now for Ons Jabeur with the down the line. Before it was maybe pace and potentially, width rather than necessarily, depth. But with this shot against a lefty, I think she needs to have good enough depth that pushes her back and she's not able to hit a really good angle, step in and hit a good angle cross court, because Jabeur is going to struggle to recover to the forehand corner. So that's going to be an interesting, interesting passage of play to witness in the final, and I think we will see that definitely. We're also going to see Jabeur, of course, drop shot. She needs to make sure she utilizes it at the right times. She, from what I saw, for the most part in the Rybakina and Sabalenka matches, did use it quite not sparingly, but effectively throughout those matches. Even she needs to do the same here. She will use the backhand slice. Interesting to see whether she uses the backhand slice to the forehand of Vondrousova, who also doesn't mind slicing. So we might see some slice battles, which might be quite fun to watch. And you only really see it a lot on grass, especially the forehand slice, which Jabeur tends to utilize and Vondrousova does as well. So we might see some interesting points and a lot of spin as well from both players, which is going to be exciting. I do think as well for Vondrousova, what she might end up doing for me is potentially trying to be aggressive, not necessarily with her shots, but more with trying to come forward. Now, she only came forward 12 times against Svitolina, so she was hugging the baseline a fair bit. So I'm not sure whether she's going to utilize that tactic, but I think she's got a decent net game. Jabeur, though, has got very good hands at the net from what I've seen. And she came to the net only 11 times, though, against Sabalenka. So both players, that was over 3 sets. So she was really hugging the baseline there, Jabeur. I guess Sabalenka doesn't really give you a huge amount of opportunities to always come in as well. She hits with a lot of pace. So interesting to see whether Jabeur does come forward more often against Vondrousova, who doesn't have as much power. But I can see both players, potentially utilizing the net when needed, and I think both players are competent at the net as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, look, I mean, for me, Vondrousova, she's got a big serve and she'll try and get 3 points from that. And rightly so, right? She's got arguably, a bigger serve and potentially, you could say potentially a more effective serve. I don't know, because Jabeur actually has been hitting a lot of aces. She may not be able to hit the serve with as much pace as Vondrousova, but she's been hitting at spots and hitting aces because she's been utilizing the serve effectively and really going for her spots. And that's maybe why her first serve percentage has been lower, because she's been probably saying to herself, look, I can't hit as much power as these girls, so I need to maybe take more risks with my placement to make sure that if I do hit it, it's going to be effective. I'm going to hit unreturnable or an ace. So that could be a factor as to why she's not being hitting as high percentage first serves. She's thinking, I don't really want to go safe on it and just make my first serve, and then potentially that's going to come back with interest, or I'm going to be at neutral. I want to be on the front foot. And the most important thing for me is what Jabeur's done really well throughout this whole tournament is the serve +1. She's been really good behind the serve, backing it up nicely with that +1. Vondrousova needs to do the same as well, but what I think Jabeur's going to do is she's going to try and get in the front foot straight away and breeze through her service games by doing that. Vondrousova defensively is quite good, though, I have to say. So it'll be interesting to see how Jabeur handles Vondrousova getting back more balls than, say, Rybakina or Sabalenka did, because I do think she's going to have to play more shots at times than she did in those previous matches against players who are a lot more aggressive. And yes, they hit more winners, but they also hit more unforced errors because they have that offensive game. Vondrousova's different. She's more varied and she can tap into her defensive capabilities, and she's happy to grind at times from the back. Jabeur needs to try and shorten the points, because I think as the points get longer, I do think Vondrousova's shot tolerance might potentially take over, and Jabeur might struggle at times and get frustrated losing longer points. So that's my take on this. Let me know your thoughts as well on how you think it's going to play out. Is there anything that I missed as well that we need to cater in? I think both players, of course, have played not a huge amount of tennis. They haven't played marathon matches. They should be fresh. They've got a couple of days off as well. They had a couple of days off. So I'm looking forward to the final tomorrow. We are going to be covering on the channel, so do make sure you tune in for that. It'll be Ons Jabeur versus Marketa Vondrousova, and I cannot wait, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a great match. Anthony will be covering that. See you guys there, and see you in the comment section below. Let me know your winner. I'm going to go for Ons Jabeur. I've actually got, by the way, the last two Ons Jabeur predictions. So for Rybakina and Sabalenka, both right. 3 sets, I said. I'm going to go for Ons Jabeur in straight sets. Now that sounds quite brave, to be honest with you, because Vondrousova has won the 2 matches they've played this year. But given how Jabeur's been playing, I think she's a different player to the player that Vondrousova played this year so far. I think she's playing some inspired tennis. She's beaten some great champions. I would be surprised if she fails at the final hurdle again. And I think it's going to be third time lucky for Ons Jabeur. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who do you think is going to win? Will it be second time lucky for Vondrousova? Will she potentially cause the upset? Jabeur is the favourite going into it, from what I know on paper. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you in the next video.